everyone. Hope you are doing good. So today we will learn about the parietal lobe. In the last class we learned about the frontal lobe. So today's topic is the parietal one. As you are aware about the location of the parietal lobe, if we look on the lateral aspect of the cerebral hemisphere, say this part, on the lateral aspect prominently there were two sulcus. One was the central sulcus, right? And the other one was the lateral sulcus of the sylvius. This is the lateral sulcus and this one is central sulcus. And if we look on the medial aspect of the cerebral hemisphere, there was parieto-occipital sulcus that was separating the occipital lobe from the parietal lobe medially. And this parieto-occipital sulcus also extends on the lateral aspect, but not the entire lateral aspect, superiorly. Okay, and this lateral sulcus, it comes up to this much. So if we extend or draw an imaginary line of the extension of this parieto-occipital sulcus and extension of this lateral sulcus, they merge at one point. So the area in between these three sulci, central sulcus, lateral sulcus and this parieto-occipital sulcus, this area is parietal lobe, right? This particular area is parietal lobe. Now, prior or in front of the central sulcus, there is precentral gyrus. And that precentral gyrus represents the entire body or the topographic representation in the precentral gyrus. That is the premotor cortex, right? The motor cortex is present in the precentral gyrus. So there is topographical representation of the entire body. On the medial aspect, pelvis and lower limb, and upper part of the body above the pelvis, there was the trunk, upper limb and face. They are represented on the lateral aspect, upside down, right? You know about that thing. That is the motor homunculus. So similarly, in the post-central gyrus, there is topographical representation of entire body, similar to the motor homunculus, upside down. That is called as sensory homunculus. Now, this sensory area, there is peculiarity about this area. If we stimulate the neuron within the sensory area, then along with the sensory reception or the sensory modality of the reception, we also get a bit of the motor response. So it's not exclusively sensory. That's why nowadays it's, instead of the being called as sensory area, we call it somatic sensory area or somatosensory area. Somatosensory area. So this somatosensory area, it is further of two types. You are aware about this thing, somatosensory area number 1 and somatosensory area number 2. So these areas, they are located in this post-central gyrus. The post-central gyrus. Like say, this is the central sulcus. So this area, post-central gyrus. So like we discussed about the different areas of the frontal lobe based on the classification of the Brodmann areas, right? There were area number 4, 6, 8, like the motor cortex, premotor cortex and frontal eye field. Similarly, in the parietal lobe, there is primary sensory area. That is called as somatosensory area number 1 or primary somatosensory area. It is represented by area number 3, 1 and 2 of Brodmann. Brodmann area number 3, 1 and 2. Then there is, next to it is somatosensory area number 2 or the secondary sensory area. Then there is association areas, association sensory areas, right? Association sensory areas. And these are area number 5 and 7. And then there is higher association sensory area, higher association sensory area. These are area number 39 and area number 40. So we can say that Broadman area number 3, 1, 2, 5, 7, 39, 40, all these are present in, all these area collectively constitute the parietal lobe. Apart from them, there are some other areas too, but these are main prominent Broadman areas which are part of the parietal lobe. So one by one we will discuss them. First, the somatosensory area number 1. It is concerned with the sensory perception, the sensory modality perception, and mainly this sensory area. See, what is the gateway of cerebral cortex? Thalamus. So all the ascending pathways, they will travel through the thalamus, and from the thalamus they will end up in somatosensory area 1 and somatosensory area 2. Okay, so this somatosensory area number 1 and 2, they collectively, they are concerned regarding all type of the sensations, whether that is the pain, temperature, vibration, position sense, or the joint position sense, or the vibration, or the discriminative touch. Okay, so all the entire somatosensory area 1 and 2, they are concerned with the sensory modality, almost all type of the sensory tactile modality, right? Tactile sensory modality. It's not like the visual or the auditory sensory. They are also the sensory one, but this is those tactile sensory, like the anterolateral pathway and dorsal column pathway. If there happens to be any lesion in this somatosensory area 1 or somatosensory area 2, then what will happen? There won't be complete loss of the sensation. This is a peculiar point. If there is, see, I said the gateway of cerebral cortex is thalamus. If there is lesion within the thalamus, in the thalamus there are the ventral, posterolateral and ventral posteromedial nucleus. So all these tactile sensation, they passes through these VPL, ventral, posterolateral and ventral posteromedial nucleus of the thalamus, and then it comes to the somatosensory area 1 and 2. So if there is any lesion that happens to be within the ventral posterolateral and ventral posteromedial nucleus of the thalamus, then there will be complete loss of the sensation. That is called as pure sensory ataxia. Ataxia, forget about the ataxia, the pure sensory loss. But if there is lesion within the somatosensory area 1 and 2, but those parts of the VPL and VPM of the thalamus, they are entirely normal, then there will be sensation will be there, but there will be deficiency in discriminating those sensations, like 2-point discrimination. All this kind of the discriminative sense of these tactile sensation will be lost if there is lesion within the somatosensory area 1 and somatosensory area number 2. Okay, now next to these areas, these two areas, somatosensory area 1 and 2, there is the third one is association, the associated sensory cortex. And if you can recall back, in the frontal lobe, we read about those things. Not in the frontal lobe, also in the motor system too, when we were talking about the planning and programming of the voluntary motor movement, like the premotor cortex that helps in planning and all these things, along with the associated sensory cortex, if you can recall back. Now the associated sensory cortex, they are area number 5 and area number 7, those two areas. So if there is any lesion within these things, first of all, what is the function? Function of these is first function will be in planning and programming, not the planning and programming, in pattern. If you can recall back from the last class, what is apraxia? Apraxia was the function of the premotor cortex is patterning and sequencing of these words. You know, these words, they are important. Write down these terms, patterning and sequencing, then you can make any sentence. Okay, if you miss these two words and make any sentence regarding, like, it will be similar to that thing, but you won't score the marks, because these words, these peculiar typical words, They are important. The pattern and sequencing of learned motor movements. Okay, learned motor movement. What does it mean? It means we have discussed about this thing in detail in the previous class. Like if I had to perform any particular action like picking the pen from the table, then there will be like compilation of the movements. I have to extend my arm, then pick the thing up, then flex it back, and then if I am supposed to write down, I will write down. So all these segments of the events, they should be performed in a pattern and sequence way. If there was any lesion in that premotor cortex, it was hampering this patterning and sequencing. Like the person won't be able to know, he won't know. Like if I have done the first step, what is the next step? And that abnormality is called as apraxia. So that apraxia will also happen if there is lesion with the area number 5 and 7. Okay, why? Because the area number 5 and 7 is the one which sends signal or communicates with the premotor cortex. It communicates with the premotor cortex. So it is having some say in patterning and sequencing of the learned motor movement. That is the one function. The second function of the area number, this one, area number 5 and 7 is stereognosis. What is stereognosis? Stereognosis. Let me write down the word stereognosis. Now, if I close my eye and put this pen in my hand, I am able to tell that there is pen in my hand without even looking at it, by just closure of the eye. Why? How can I interpret whether this is a pen or not without even looking at this thing? Because of those tactile sensation, right? Tactile sensation. So these tactile sensation, they are carried to this particular area is helpful in recognizing a particular object by just touching it without even looking at it. It means it has got the function of the integration of visual. When we look at the thing, we know if any, see, we know this is the pen. If any unknown thing, you have never been exposed to that particular thing in your entire life, and anybody asks you to close your eyes and then put that thing in your hand, you won't be able to say it. You won't be able to, you can just explain the shape, like whether it is circular or the rectangle or the triangle, because you are just aware about these things. You haven't seen that object in your life before. So if you have seen it, then what happens, these areas, they help in integrating the visual and the tactile sensation, integration and processing of the visual and tactile sensation. Once it is integrated, it is learned. So without even looking at this thing, we will be able to tell that this is the pen, this is the triangle thing or the circular thing, whatever things you are putting in the hand. That process, that thing is called as stereognosis. So if there is any lesion in this area number 5 and 7, then it will lead to astereognosis. So what is astereognosis? Astereognosis is like if a person is suffering from this kind of the lesion in the parietal lobe, area number 5 and 7, then that person won't be able to tell about the object by just touching it or feeling it without even looking at it. The pen, he knows this is the pen. If that person opens the eye, he will tell this is the pen with looking at it. But after the closure of the eye and you automatically put something in, he won't be able to appreciate it. So that is called as astereognosis. So the lesion of the area number 5 and 7, first it was leading to apraxia, right? Apraxia. The second one is astereognosis. And in the case of the apraxia, the peculiar type of the apraxia happens in this parietal lobe involvement. That is called as constructional apraxia. Constructional apraxia. Because this area 5 and 7, it is the center for the integration of the tactile sensation with the visual, right? So in the case of the constructional apraxia, the person won't be able to draw the diagrams, to draw the objects. Like if you say that person to draw the rectangle, he might not be able to draw the rectangle. Construction, to construct. So this parietal lobe, it is kind of processor of our brain. Our computer brain, the brain is the computer, and this parietal lobe, it acts as a processor. So broadly we can say there are three, like by and large we can divide it into three parts. One was the somatosensory cortex area, somatosensory area number 1 and 2. That was regarding the discriminative sensation of the tactile sensation, right? The area 5 and 7, the second one. This is regarding the integration of the that tactile sensation along with the visual and all these things, right? So if there is any issue with the area number 5 and 7, there is less blood supply, there is a lesion because of any like space occupying lesion or any kind of a thing, then there will be constructional apraxia and stereognosis. Now the third part, this is very important. The third part is higher association area. These are association sensory areas. The higher association areas, those higher association areas are area number 39 and area number 40. These are higher sensory association areas. Okay. Now this area number 39, it is angular gyrus. It is that part of parietal lobe that is angular gyrus. Like if you look at the diagram in the angular gyrus, like it is in between the, it's kind of the merging point of the three lobes, the occipital lobe from the posterior, superiorly from the parietal lobe, and inferior from the temporal lobe. So that at the three lobes merging point, that inferior most part of the parietal lobe is called as angular gyrus. And then this area number 40, this is present in supramarginal gyrus. Medially, if we dig further from the angular gyrus, then this supramarginal gyrus comes. This is area number 40. Now, this angular gyrus, particularly these two areas, they are the main head office of those process and interpretation. Like the key words here are processing and interpretation. Of what? Processing and interpretation of visual, auditory and motor signal, or we can call it somatomotor, both the sensory and the motor. All these signals from different areas of the brain, because the visual sensation is concerned with the visual cortex in the occipital lobe. Auditory will be in part of the temporal gyrus, temporal lobe, sorry, and the motor one in the precentral gyrus. So all these visual, auditory and motor signals, they are integrated, processed and then interpreted within the parietal lobe, particularly in these two areas, area number 39 and area number 40. So this helps in the visual to learn about the visual and spatial orientation of our body, visual spatial orientation of the body, or we can call it like the image formation of the body. Like we know a body image present in the space. So this image formation of a body by the integration and interpretation of these different modality of the sensation, the visual, the auditory, the somatosensory area, all these modalities, they are integrated and processed and understood or comprehended by these two areas, which leads to make us aware about ourselves and our body with respect to the environment within the space. Okay, So that's the function of this angular and supramarginal gyrus. Okay, so all these are different Brodmann areas located within the parietal lobe and their functions. Now coming